As usual, the following will contain spoilers for 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. I don't know why I paused there. I blanked out for a moment. Holy crap. Anyway, that should have given you more than enough time to click off the video if you want to avoid spoilers. I would also highly recommend playing the game for yourselves or watching someone's playthrough of it because it has a great story. And if you love sci-fi, this is definitely a must-watch. Or a must-play in this case. Anyway, onward with the video! On today's episode of 13 Sentinels Character Files, we will be discussing about Keitaro Miura. As usual, we will start from 2188 up to the third loop version. The 2188 Keitaro Miura is an engineer as well as a good architect. He also happens to be Natsuno Minami's boyfriend and a target of teasing for Yuki Takamiya, Minami's mother. He's also a history buff who is immensely, I guess we could call it, has a healthy obsession? I don't know how to word it properly, but he has ah, a healthy fascination of the world pre-World War II. As stated here, he's also the one who created the sectors. The reason why the sectors are combined into each other in the form of a flying saucer is due to the fact that he based the architectural design, or should I say the design layout of the sectors, basing them on the actual colony that they existed in space during the extinction event. He is also the one who helped in creating the sectors and segregating them by time period based on Tamao Kurabe and Chihiro Morimura's ideas of educating the new human race in the different time periods of history of humanity so that they would understand and also accumulate knowledge and experience through many different types of scenarios, situations, and environments. It is unknown if if all of them had a pre-selected era or sector to be in, because we are able to confirm that at least two cycles worth of Keitaro Miura ended up in 1945. The second loop one, as inferred by when Ida Tetsuya told Tomi Kisaragi, or should I say Miyuki Inaba, that Hijiyama and Keitaro are both from a war-torn era, and the only war-torn era in the sectors is Sector 5, 1945. The third loop, Keitaro Miura, also hails from from Sector 5, 1945, alongside Takatoshi Hijiyama and Tamao Kurabe. One must remember, even though they did come into contact with Tsukasa Okino, Okino did not originate from Sector 5, but instead from one of the different sectors. The most likely being Sector 2 or Sector 3. However, this isn't Tsukasa Okino's character file, so I'll save that for a different time. And as you can infer from the above picture, the second Keitaro Miura is indeed BJ, the robot that Natsuno Minami found. It is actually very likely that Keitaro purposely sought Natsuno out, whether it was out of instinct due to the fact that he cared immensely for her even from his original predecessor's DNA, or simply by very, very oddly dumb chance. Regardless, fate brought Natsuno and BJ together, and then brought Natsuno and Keitaro together. Yeah, that's one hell of a red string of fate, by the way, because by all technical account, Natsuno actually met two different variations of Keitaro Miura from two different time periods, cycles, loops. The second loop, Keitaro Miura, was privy to many things, including possessing many video logs and memories from 2188, including and not limited to logs about the Interstellar Development Project, about the final moments of the 15 survivors, or should I say, in the case of the actual situation that happened, the final moments of the 10 survivors. But one must note he also possesses the data from before the extinction event of 2188 during 2187, which included logs of Natsuno and Keitaro simply having a conversation. Why that was recorded is never explained. But, eh? Anyway, there are also other logs, such as the logs of Juro Izumi's memories. And surprisingly enough, the logs of Hijiyama Takatoshi. It is. Oh yeah, in Eiseki Gahara's assassination of Chihiro Morimura. One could say that BJ contains an immense amount of important information from 2188, and in fact, most of the exposition for at least half of the events happening in the game are explained through logs that are shown by BJ, as well as somehow possessing data logs from Renya Goto, and most importantly, explaining who caused the glitch to happen in the simulation and pretty much who's at fault for everything that's happening right in the game via Ryoko Shinonomi's depression and, well, sadness over Ida Tetsuya betraying her in 2188, not to mention her getting tired of being alive and all that. But I digress. Now, this is merely speculation, but I would assume that the reason why Keitaro Miura of the second loop, BJ, was able to come across all this information is the same reason that Miyuki Inaba as well as Juro Izumi were able to glean such information, which is very likely because of the fact that they were continuously being sent to and from the command ship via Ida Tetsuya's meddling and experiments on body jacking, because as we recall, he was experimenting on them because he wanted to bring back Tomi Kisaragi, his Tomi Kisaragi, by downloading her into the actual Tomi Kisaragi of the third loop. Keitaro had a fast friendship with Ace Sekigahara, who, well, kind of betrayed him, sadly. Although at the time, Iseki Gahara had doubts with Chihiro Morimura, so he betrayed the friendship with Keitaro to enact a specific action that was commanded to him by Ida Tetsuya at the time. Eventually, though, Iseki Gahara wisened up and started using BJ as a, you could call it, a terminal device to also store his own important data, such as a video warning to himself about his memory loss and about, well, not trusting anyone. Another thing that should be noted, the reason why the third loop Keitaro Miura could not pilot his Sentinel even though he had the activation code as well as the surgery that would allow him to not be affected by, well, the DD426 virus implanted by Ida Tetsuya, is because BJ was still being registered as a Sentinel pilot. Each Sentinel actually represents the pods from which their bodies are inside, as well as their nanomachines. Which means that the Sentinels were registering BJ, or should I say Keitaro Miura, as an active pilot already, even though BJ, by his own admission, did not know where his Sentinel went. And that's pretty much the cusp of BJ's story arc. Him and Natsuno going around each sector trying to look for his Sentinel so that he could transfer the piloting rights of it to someone else. Because as long as he was still registered, the Keitaro Miura of the third loop could not pilot his Sentinel anymore. BJ would eventually sacrifice himself to give over the piloting authority over to Natsuno Minami. Fortunately, at the end of the game, BJ was able to be brought back via, as Juro put it, a forced reset to before the kaiju attack, which means that BJ technically gets a happy ending. However, BJ is also offered by Keitaro and Natsuno to enter into their nanomachine so that he could experience the outside world, the new world that has been cultivated for them. If you're wondering how this works, essentially what would happen would be BJ would become an inhabitant of their nanomachines, and you would think of him as a subconscious. You know, that angel and devil thing that you usually see represented in cartoons for good and evil? Except in this case, BJ would become a subconscious inside your body, able to feel and see and experience everything you're doing in the outside world. And with that, let us move on to the third loop Keitaro Miura. The third loop Keitaro Miura was selected specifically to be the pilot of the Sentinel. At that time, he had no knowledge of the fact that there are actually already a pre-selected 15, and it will always be them. That is an unchanging fact. It doesn't matter which loop it is, the 15 of them will always be the pilots for the Sentinels, because the Sentinels also represent their growth pods. Anyway, Keitaro received a surgery from Tsukasa Okino that allowed him to pilot the Sentinel without being subjected to the effects of DD-426. However, when his Sentinel shifted to 1945, he could no longer pilot it because there was another instance of him that was already registered as a Sentinel pilot there ahead of him, namely BJ. Because of the fact that there were two Keitaro Miuras technically in the same sector, and because they were both technically the real Keitaro Miura, because both of their datas were from Keitaro Miuras of differing loops, universal control could not manipulate them, unlike with the NPCs of say Tomi and Chihiro's best friend, Miwako, or with the Tamao Kurabe NPC grandma. Grandmother NPC. I had that in reverse. Sorry about that. Anyway, because they were both technically the actual Keitaro Miuras, Universal Control had to decide instead on a basis of who would take more precedence. And of course, it chose the one who came to the sector first, namely BJ. On another note, Tsukasa also implanted something else inside Keitaro Miura. It was a data that would allow anyone who came into contact with him that was one of the 15 or the other 14 pilots, allow them to become immediately registered with the Sentinel. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're immediately able to pilot, though, but it simply activates the code in their bodies that would make them compatible with the Sentinel. They still would need to find a Sentinel first to become registered to it, though. Or in the case of Shu, forcefully came into contact with the Sentinel via the magic gun created by Fluffy. Anyway, Keitaro also had the unfortunate encounter with Nenji Ogata, who decided to sock him and knock him out for no apparent reason, aside from him commenting on how weird Nenji looked. Meh. Keitaro has also shown a great interest in Natsuno, considering her quite a beauty. So I'd say he's quite a man of culture because very I'm pretty sure he's gained a leg fetish from the fact that she wears bloomers all the time. Hey, to be fair, Natsuno does really have great legs. She's also a track and field expert. She's also a track and field club member, so she runs a lot. Those are some really well-toned legs. Anyway, we're not here to discuss Keitaro Miura's most likely leg fetish. So, anyway, yeah, that was Keitaro Miura. Oh, and on a side note, Keitaro is also the type of husbando that you would bring to your parents, as what Natsuno did at the end of the game, because she wanted to make it official and all that. Keitaro, on the other hand, wanted to go through the motions because he felt He felt it would be the proper thing to do because, as we recall, he's raised on old morals thanks to residing in Sector 5, which is 1945. So he has a huge amount of honor as a man and also wants to take proper responsibility, introduce himself to her parents, regardless of the fact that they're actually just simulated AIs inside, well, the simulation. And with that, we're done with Keitaro Miura. So, yeah. End screen, end screen. Like, comment, subscribe. But most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the content. Next time, we will be discussing Keitaro's war buddy, or at least supposed to be war buddy, because they never actually went to war together until the kaiju invaded anyway. Takatoshi Hijiyama. Also, for all of you trap lovers, a fellow man of culture, I suppose, because Hijiyama really loves his traps, apparently. Ha! So, with that, I hope to see you next time in the next video. Bye!